Welcome to my shop. My name is Rachel Gingell. This tutorial I'll show you how to replace the valves on a John Deere tractor. I'm working on a 30-20, but these techniques apply whether you're working on a 30-10, 30-20, 4000, 40-10, or 40-20 gas tractor. My hope is at the end of this video you'll have the confidence to tackle this repair on your own tractor. Now, sometimes when a tractor needs a valve replacement, you're going to hear a chirping sound when it's running. Also, once you turn the tractor off, it'll chirp 2 or 3 more times. That sound is an indication that you have a valve problem. Now, every once in a while, you can do just a valve adjustment, and I'll show you how to do that in this video. That's certainly something that you could try right off the bat. However, if your tractor's been running poorly for quite some time, it's likely that the valve's burnt, and an adjustment isn't going to solve that problem. You'll need to do a complete valve train replacement. So I'll show you how to do that. Throughout the video, you're going to see my dad. There's a few parts that you just need 2 people's help with, so that's who's going to help me today. You'll see him. Now I'm going to start the tractor up so that you can compare how yours runs versus how mine runs. My head is off of the tractor. You can see that I have the surface all redone. I've already done the valves for 3 cylinders. I'm going to leave this last cylinder to do with you. Here are some of the valves that we took out of the tractor. This one is physically nicked out. That is a really extreme case. It's a wonder that the tractor even ran. Others here are grooved. You can see this one's all black. Really poor condition on these valves, so it's going to make a huge difference in the way that the tractor runs once we install this with the new valves in it. So we're going to go ahead and show you how to use a compressor and replace those valves.
We're using just a standard compressor with just a 1-inch drop. It'd be nicer if you had one with a really big drop. We know most people don't, so we're going to show you how to just use a standard one. John Deere has a real deep drop. That's why I'm helping Rachel today. It's kind of a real pain to get this in there and get it on there and make it work, but we're going to show you how easily it is to work with a regular compressor. So you got to get this wiggled in there, and you can see that the head has to line up with the valve here. So I'm going to line it up and get it compressed, and then Rachel's going to take it apart.
So these are spring loaded. That's why I'm wearing safety glasses. They can shoot back at you, so you just got to be careful while you're working. There you go. So both the little keepers came off. Go ahead and release here. And that retainer will reuse, but you get new springs and new valves in your kit. Then the valve will just pull out from the back side like that.
And I'll take a compressor off here and get it out of the way. Also, you can see that the intake, only the intake has valve seals. And here's the valve seal for the intake. The exhaust gets too hot for valve seals. The exhaust gas is a lot hotter than the cool gas going in, so we're going to replace them also. They do not come with the head gasket set. They're sold separately. So if your seals are bad and you're going to do it yourself, the machine shop will do it for you, but if you're going to do it, buy the seals.
Our next step is to replace the guides in the head. These new guides come in your kit, and it's important to replace them. If they get worn when the valve is into the guide, it'll be sloppy. This one's nice and tight with my new valve and new guide, and that's what we want to accomplish in the head. So in order to drive the old guides out, you'll need a tool like this one. I spun this one on a lathe. It's really simple. If you have a lathe and want to make your own, go for it. If you don't, I can spin one out for you and send it to you. So I'm going to drop this into the guide in my block here, and then I'm just going to drive it all the way until it comes out. Just like that. Let me pick up the guide there and show you that it's all the way out. I put my new guides in the freezer so that they will drive in a little bit easier. Notice that this is directional, and this top part that has the groove is going to come up towards where the springs are on the valve. So I'm going to set this into the chamber here. I did clean out my cavity before putting my new guides in. We're going to use that same tool, and it's important to drive this through straight. You don't want to get it stuck crooked, and I'm going to drive this all the way down until it's flush down in the valve chamber.
We drove the guide in, and when the guide gets driven in with this tool, you can peen just the very end of it a little bit. And you can see here's the old one that we drove out, and the valve gets right to the very end, and the very end is just peened over. And you can use a reamer like this. I used a reamer on my drill motor, and it gets it cut out. If you don't have one of these expensive reamers, you can just simply use a drill bit that is just one little bit fractional bigger and put a chamfer on the end of that. So all I'm doing is chamfering the very end where I pounded on it. I just took that little lip off, and when you take that lip off, all this material is tight, and you can do it until you get the end out. Now see, I just got the end to where now it's nice and tight. So all I did was took a drill motor and took that little bit of end off so that my valve's nice and tight on the guide, and took that lip off the edge. We're getting ready to touch up the seats. These seats are bad because the valves that were in there had hammered down. This one was the one that was all black, that the valve was burnt out. I actually have a seater here, so I'm going to put this tool here on, and it has the right stone, and it just spins in there and cuts a real nice smooth. I'm not trying to grind it, I'm just trying to smooth it off.
If you do not have a tool like this one, you could purchase a manual set like this. This is much more affordable, and if you are just going to do valves on occasion, this is probably the route you'd want to go rather than the power tool like what my dad is showing. So this, you just choose the appropriate size adapter and bit here, and then you slide it around in the same manner. This takes a little bit longer, but it is still equally as effective. We're using a wire brush like this one to clean up the area before we go ahead and put our new valves in. Also, on the opposite side, I do have my new valve seal into place over top of the guide. So we got our intake valve in there, and we're going to tighten that up with the compressor. Oops, let me get the spring in there first before you. Okay, and then I've got my retainer here. On the intake, we have the non-rotating retainer. On the exhaust, we would have a rotating retainer like this one. So I like to put a little bit of grease on these keepers to kind of hold them into place. And these are directional. The smaller end goes in, and you can see that there's a little bit of a groove on the valve, and there's a groove here on this keeper, and that's what you're trying to line up. So we'll just get those on either side, and then go ahead and decompress, just like that. And then once we get the compressor off, I like to just give it a little tap to make sure that it's on there good. We follow that same procedure all along the way. When you're ready to make this repair on your own tractor, you're going to need some parts. The parts on the table in front of me are available on my website. It's farmtractorrepair.com. Let me go over them with you so that you can buy exactly what you need. Here we have a valve train kit. This comes with both the intake and exhaust valves, springs, guides, and keepers. All those pieces together in a kit. If you want new valve seals, those are offered separately. And if you need a guide insertion tool, that is offered individually as well. While you're at this repair, if you want to change the oil, you can add a filter to your cart and then you'll have it. All of these pieces here are part of the head gasket set. So you do get the head gasket, also the valve tappet cover gasket, all these other pieces which are for the manifold, the carburetor to manifold, all involved in the repair that you will likely need. If for some reason you are only going to do a valve adjustment, then you will only need the valve tappet cover gasket out of this set, so we offer this as a separate purchase individually. You can click the I in the corner and that will give you a link to my website. It's farmtractorrepair.com. Your purchase on my site helps to fund future tractor tutorials. At this point, before I put my head back onto the tractor, I'm going to do some inspection to verify that the valves were indeed the only issue on this tractor, not a secondary issue. So a way that I can do some inspection is to look at the head gasket. I'm looking for any sort of mark that would mean that it's been burnt out. I'm checking my antifreeze to see if there's oil in the antifreeze. I'm checking my oil to look for coolant in the oil. If you notice that your head gasket is damaged or you have a problem with your coolant or oil, you need to do some further inspection because valves likely aren't your only issue. However, if your tractor inspects good like mine does, valves are probably your only issue and you'll be ready to put your head back onto the tractor. At this point, we're ready to put the head onto the tractor. I have my head gasket in place. I didn't spray it with copper coat. The manual says to just put it on dry. There are 2 locator pins here which will help us line up the head. When we pick the head up and set it down, we want to just set it down easily, not slide it back and forth because we don't want to damage the head gasket at all. Before I put my head bolts into the head, I'm dipping them in some engine oil, just the threads, and then inserting them into the head. I do have the hardened washer underneath as well. I'm not leaving that off, I'm reusing it. I'm gonna start all of my head bolts. There's different lengths throughout the head. And then once I have them all started, I'll go back through with a torque wrench. The specification is 130 foot-pounds of torque. I'll start in the center and then work in a clockwise motion throughout the entire head. I'm dropping in the last of my push rods here. When you put your push rods in, make sure that they go all the way down into your valve lifters. Then you're ready to put your rocker assembly on. Notice that there's a little hole here that lines up with this dowel. That just helps you line up your rocker assembly and get it into place. Then I'm gonna run along here and make sure that it's all lined up with my push rods, because they'll just adjust a little bit. Once I have those into place, I'll use my 4 bolts along the top of here. These are torqued to 55 foot-pounds of torque. At this point, I'm ready to make my valve adjustment. My intake valves will be adjusted to 15 thousandths and my exhaust valves will be at 28 thousandths. There's a big gap on those exhaust valves. Now you want to do that when your valves are on the compression stroke. Right now, I have cylinder number 1 on the compression stroke. So over on the right-hand side of the bell housing, there's an inspection cover. You can move the flywheel around until you find TDC and line that up with the mark. At that point, you're ready to make your adjustments to valves number 1, this one, and this one. You can see that these move up and down. This one, and both of cylinder number 4 are not ready to have their valve adjustment yet. So first we're gonna do these 4. So I'm starting here with 28 thousandths on my exhaust valve. I'm gonna put my feeler gauge in there. I want this to be snug, but not overly, like way too tight. So you move this with a screwdriver head. You move this forward and back to where you want to make that adjustment. You know, test it with your feeler gauge, and then once you have it where you want it to be, you tighten up the nut. I'm going to take my wrench off, and I'll double check that. I like where that is. Then I would do the same procedure with 15 thousandths here, 15 thousandths, and 28 thousandths. Once I've made all 4 of those adjustments, then I'm going to rotate my flywheel around 360 degrees again, so that cylinder number 4 is now on the compression stroke, and I'll make that adjustment to those valves in my remaining 2 centers. I'm finishing up putting everything back onto my tractor. You can see that I have the manifold. On the other side, I put in new spark plugs and hooked up everything with my distributor. You'll want to do the same thing to finish up your valve job. I hope that this tutorial is helpful to you when you need to replace the valves on your own John Deere tractor. Please subscribe to our channel. We release new videos all the time, and also purchase the parts at our website. It's farmtractorrepair.com.